today we're going to be testing a car that should be very familiar to me, and yet I'm really excited to drive this for the first time. This is a Porsche 981 generation Cayman, and it's the base model with the 2.7 liter engine, and it's got the PDK transmission. I own the first generation 987.1 Cayman S, and so that has a 3.4 liter engine making 295 horsepower. This 981 base has a 2.7 liter making about, I think, 275 horsepower. It has direct injection. There's no more pesky IMS bearing to worry about. And overall, it should just be a more reliable engine, a lot less prone to oil starvation, overheating, and so forth. So we are in sport mode, and I will be using the gear lever to actually shift. So let's see how this thing does. The engine sounds smoother than mine for some reason. A little bit more high strung as well. $275 horsepower isn't a whole lot, and this thing's definitely down on torque compared to my car as well. It's actually a pretty noticeable difference. I believe this engine revs out all the way to 7,800, so it's definitely more high strung. In terms of raw acceleration, the PDK transmission kind of makes up for it, because in my car, with the stock 6-speed manual transmission, it takes a while to get into the next gear, whereas this one, with the PDK, it's pretty much flawless. Even though this is one of the, I would say, earlier PDK transmissions, it's not as good as something like a new 991 or upcoming 992 GT3, but it still shifts so quick. I am a little bit saddened by the fact that Porsche designed the lever so that a push is an upshift and a pull is a downshift. It's just a lot more natural for me to pull for an upshift. My car has a little over 73,000 miles on it, and you hear some of the trim in the interior starting to creak, whereas this thing feels a lot more just well put together. I get the sense that the suspension is really doing all the soaking up of the imperfections in the road instead of the chassis flexing as a result. Wow, this chassis is just so good. It's so communicative. The one thing I do miss about my car though is it has much better steering feel. It's like wriggling around in your hands. You can really tell the type of surface that you're driving on. Yes. Beautiful induction noise. Gotta love a flat 6 that revs to over 7,000. Great suspension, compliant, and yet it communicates well. Doesn't feel like a track suspension in terms of its response, but it's a perfect balance for a road like this. This is a notoriously bumpy road, but this suspension is honestly pretty faultless. It's a really confidence-inspiring car. It's got just the right amount of power for a road like this as well. It really lets you wind out the engine without just going, way too fast. I think chassis-wise, I wouldn't say this car is a huge step up over my 987.1. That amazing turn-in that you get from a mid-engine car is absolutely here, as it is in my 987. It doesn't give you that pendulum feeling that something like a 911 gives you. This car just feels natural to drive. Oh man, I love Porsche brakes. They're just so good. This car is really, really good, and I really admire what it can do with so little. It doesn't have much weight, it doesn't have much power, and that is a freaking awesome Diablo that just drove by. But yeah, this car is it's so competent at everything that it's almost, dare I say it, slightly boring as a result. It's just so good. It's so predictable. It's so easy to drive hard. It doesn't really light my hair on fire in any way. Does that even make sense? How can a car that sounds that good and drives this well be boring? It takes itself a little bit too seriously, in my opinion. You know, I think that my Cayman S is actually a little bit guilty of that as well, but I think because that has a bit more of a go-kart-like feel, and this one is just so much more refined, and that build quality and just like it does everything right, the way it handles, the way it steers, the way it brakes. I feel like I'm being very contradictory right now, but it's not really a car that makes me laugh when I drive it. I think that's why the 987, you don't see that many out on the road, and not a whole lot of people daily drive them. Whereas I see a lot more 981s. First and foremost, this is like a daily driver friendly sports car. It does a great job at it, don't get me wrong. It's just, for me, I would like something a little bit more hardcore. What do you guys think about the exterior styling of the 981 versus the 987? I know that's a very subjective thing, but in my opinion, this car just looks a lot more elegant, and I think the body lines flow a lot better. And I think a lot of that has to do with the roof line from the side profile. The 987 is very frog-like, very amphibian, whereas this one, it smooths out that overall angle a little bit, and it makes the car just look a lot more modern. And there's definitely something to be said about these 981s on the used market. These cars hold their value really well compared to the 987.1. And a big part of that is the whole IMS/bore scoring scare, which you get with the M96 and M97 motors. A 987.1 Cayman S like mine with reasonable miles, with a lot of miles, it would be around 20 grand. With reasonable miles, it would be around 25 to 30. And then when you step up to the point 2, the car basically looks the same. It's got a little bit more power, but it's really not all that much faster. But just because of the whole engine scare problem of the previous gen, those go for at least 10 grand more, all else the same. And then you step up to the 981, then you're looking at, like, for an S with a stick, you're looking at $40,000. Don't let my, I guess, lack of enthusiasm for this car really deter you if what you're looking for is a streetable sports car. In streetable sports car terms, this is maybe the best car you can get out there. A big thank you to Andrew, the owner of this 981 Cayman, for letting me drive it. He's actually following me right now in my 987. Thanks guys for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you have not already, and I'll see you next time.